it's quite crazy that we're in the 21st century, yet big international companies are sending each other pieces of paper that then humans need to put into the computer.
And right now with IDP, so intelligent document processing, we are mostly, we're also doing like some pattern recognitions so that it's, so that the tool is layout agnostic.
It's not just about the savings, it's also about it being harder and harder to find people who will actually want to do this kind of a job.
True.
Today, to find people who will be doing it and will be doing it long enough for it to make sense for you to teach them, it's getting really, really hard. So this is another reason to start doing it as automatic as we possibly can. This is our announcement.
Yes, please,
to
please.
all the people who are designing invoices and other types of
really
documents.
For automation, a text file is going to be better. Just listing everything out. We can deal with that, but no fancy layout.
Yeah, no nested tables.
Please, no.
Konnichiwa. Welcome to the Office Samurai podcast, where we strike inefficiencies with precision of an Edo period archer. This time, we're going to be discussing intelligent document processing, so digitized processing of invoices, purchase orders, account statements, government IDs, customs documents, all the paper and paperless paper you may have. I'm your host, Andrzej Kinastowski, one of the founders of Office Samurai, the company that believes your business shouldn't be held hostage by a poorly scanned document. So, whether you're a business leader, a tech geek, or just someone who wants to stop shuffling PDFs and get to the real work, you're in the right place. Now, grab your favorite katana, or that surprisingly pointy letter opener you liberated from accounting, and let's get to it. Almost 20 years ago, when I was starting my corporate career, I was hired into a BPO. And my job at first was to book invoices, which was a usual entry-level job in a BPO at that time. And basically, I would every day I would get a package of actual paper invoices, and I would be typing them into a computer. And I remember thinking at the time that it's quite crazy that we're in the 21st century, yet big international companies are sending each other pieces of paper that then humans need to put into the computer. And it was peculiar. And some other customers of that BPO, the people were not doing all of it manually, they had OCRs. And I was quite jealous of them. But a few years later, when I moved into continuous improvement and I was doing lean management projects, I have seen that some of those teams, they actually put more work into fixing what the OCR has done wrongly than they would have if they just booked those invoices manually like I was doing. And so those were kind of old school kind of OCRs where for every new invoice, you would have to build what was called a mask, or if the invoice template changed, you would have to change a mask. So the mask would tell the tool, with this type of invoice, you can expect the bank account to be in this part of the page and the gross amount in that part. So it required a lot of maintenance, and it wasn't that great. That was those 20 years ago. And today we're here to talk about how those things are being done now. I am joined today by Tomasz Wierzbicki. He is one of the consultants in Office Samurai. He is an expert in a lot of things. So he is working on intelligent document processing, communication mining, Gen AI agents, among other things. So a man of many talents. Tomasz, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, very happy to be here.
Tell me, why are you here? Meaning, why are you the one that I am talking to about intelligent document processing?
So sure, as mentioned, so there's intelligent document processing and recently more towards like classical machine learning and with communications mining, it's mostly NLP, so natural language processing. So the story started somewhere around like 2 years ago, and I don't know who encouraged me, whether it was you or Dominic. I remember our tech lead, Konrad, doing some experiments with document understanding, and you were like, maybe you would try it. And so I tried it and got hooked up on it very quickly, actually. So it's very interesting to be combining the stuff we regularly do, the RPA or automation, with this little bit of artificial intelligence, and it doesn't really matter which one it is. So today we're going to be focusing on the document processing, but definitely very interesting time and domain to be right now, nowadays. With the rapid advance of technology, very interesting place. I feel like I'm learning every day and stuff gets obsolete so very quickly right now. But yeah, hopefully what I've learned so far throughout those 2 years is going to be interesting for people to hear. So yeah, thumbs up for that.
When it comes to the old school OCRs that we've been using, that's 20 years ago in a BPO, how are today's tools different? Because what I saw those 20 years ago was not that impressive.
Yeah, so just a short disclaimer for me, it's going to be more like 10 to 15 years ago. Let's remember the age difference, the gap. So 20 years ago, I was more like high school student and stuff. Yeah, but I had to deal with those classical stuff. And back at the time, as I remember it, it was a matter of if it really pays off, because it's freakishly expensive to be using those OCRs. And back then, the technology was not as mature as it is right now. Even referring to Konrad again, he said something that right now OCRs are kind of hitting the upper limit of their efficiency. So the technology is really mature and currently, being enhanced with some deep learning and probably large language models as well. So there's a lot of experimentations going. But as I remember it, there was a lot of mistakes. So the volumes that you wanted to process with OCR, they really needed to be huge enough to, so that the solution can pay off and on the long run, right? Because then you would still need to repeat some typos, the characters. The common thing was, that L looked like 1 and zeros looked like O's and stuff like that. So still there was a lot of post-processing done on that OCR text. And I think that was mostly also the classical approach would be, even though there was OCR, then it couldn't do much more than just reading text, recognizing text. And right now with IDP, so intelligent document processing, we are mostly, we're also doing like some pattern recognitions so that the tool is layout agnostic, right? Because when you have a document, then you're probably gonna have some sort of structure, right? So usually it's not going to be fixed. Actually, we can do like a division. In general, we could split those documents into like no structure at all. So, you can argue that there's always a structure because you would have some paragraphs and headings and all this stuff. But if you take one contract or some certificates, then it might be totally different from the other. But on the other hand, if we go towards more like structured side of things, then you would have common types that everybody knows, like invoices on purchase orders and stuff, when you can expect them to have certain stuff on them, or even we can name an example from like Polish legislation where you actually binded by the law, I think, to include certain type of information on your invoice, right? So you can expect not only a presence of a given piece of data, but also some structure, like you're gonna be header. If there's multiple pages, then you're probably gonna have that header and footnote repeated over the multiple pages, right? So there's gonna be different layout. And then we can go into like full structure. So our famous tax PIT, right form for doing taxes. So I think everybody went through that at least once in their life, to fill in this form in a paper format, or the old way of bank transfers on a post office, right? So there's that. So right now we're not only focused on getting the text, but also getting locations and probably, the angle that is skewed, how the document is skewed, all sorts of different parameters that are partly probably part of some intellectual property by the providers, which kind of features do they want to extract from documents. But the long story short is it's not only about getting the text, but also recognizing structure, so more like image recognition kind of a situation, not only just the text part.
And this is something that is very easy for humans. I remember when I was taught to read those invoices, I mean, they showed me a few, they told me what kind of information I'm looking for, and it's very easy for a human to recognize those patterns, right? But it was always very hard for a computer to do it. So how does it work? Let's stick with those invoices.
Sure.
From a business user perspective. How does it work so that we put an invoice in, a digitized invoice, and then as an output, we get all the information nicely sorted into an Excel table?
Okay, so based on the projects I've done, the usual path would involve like a couple of crucial steps that you would always do. So not every document you have gonna be native, like PDF native kind of a situation where you actually can select the text, right? Sometimes it's either flat or it's even scanned. So then those tools need to either OCR or just extract the text. Then it's simpler because you don't get whenever you need OCR, then you also need to start considering some efficiency, and there might be mistakes. So better case if you just have the native document where text is selectable by dragging and mouse over, right? Or you can copy and paste. So first step would be to digitize, and here, well, the whole OCR realm is open for research. There's many different types and vendors out there on the market. So yeah, basically we need to get the text. But apart from just the text, we also extract those features I mentioned. So usually it looks like it takes a form of like a big object. So like in programming and code-wise, talking code-wise, it's a huge object when you have all sorts of different parameters. So it's not only the words that are extracted, but it could be words, their location, maybe the nearest neighborhoods, locations, like the skewness of the document, and all different weights and biases that you can expect. And as said, probably most of those are not like designated by a key, but you don't know what they are. So they are probably part of intellectual property. Actually, feature engineering in machine learning takes like a lot of time. So what you use is probably also what you want to protect, so that your tool is this efficient. So then you would have that OCR text and the document object model, or however it's called for a given solution. And then you would start feeding it into some kind of machine learning algorithm. In a more classical approach, it would probably be a combination of some deep neural nets. For the image the structure part, it would probably be some convolutional neural networks. For the text part, I'm guessing that right now embedding's probably gonna be on top. So most probably there's one big net or even several that take that data as input, and then they are either pre-trained, so that's a big part of it. The supplier can either offer you some pre-trained models, so specifically for invoices or some other document types, or you would need to do the training on your own. And here, the topic is again vast, how you could do it. So let's put that aside for now. So let's assume that your model is trained and it can deal with with that input, that data that you want to feed it. And then basically you want to do two things. First is classification, most likely. So if you cannot ensure that you are only getting one particular document types, because oftentimes we observe, okay, there's a shared mailbox, right, that only gets invoices, only gets orders, only whatever. So you don't need to do much filtering up front. But if you get different various document types, then what you might want to do is to classify. So first step would be the algorithm to tell you what document type it is, right, without human intervention, to recognize that it's, for example, invoice or maybe credit note or something else. And again, it's not gonna be, of course, keyword-based classifier, because that's the first thing you might want to think about. Like simple solution could be just search for specific keywords and such. And yeah, go for it. Why not? Something if simple and works is not stupid, right? But right now it's more, again, a kind of a machine learning learn. So then you could also make a feedback loop, so then to reinforce the algorithm. So it's not going to be as simple as just keyword-based. But basically, you just want to route documents. Okay, this is something else, because you might just want to sort or take different action based on that.
Sure. But when you're talking about reinforcing, if I understand correctly, if the algorithm isn't sure that this is this particular type of document, then it would seek like human help for the human to decide what type of a document it is. And then this data we can use to retrain the model to make it stronger, to make it able to be more sure of its decisions.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can dive on that deeper later, how it works.
Sure.
So yeah, exactly. You can build that feedback loop to get, since you needed to involve human for validation, then why not use it and reinforce to supply more training examples to the model. Okay, so classification is the first part, and usually the second part, which is more often expected, desired, is extraction. So like just a fancy word for just getting the important stuff out of the document, right? So on the invoices, let's stick to that example. You would have that invoice number and probably a date, and those products or services you're paying for. So probably, maybe some table, like more structured form with, I don't know, some article numbers, quantities, their prices, probably some total tax and all these stuff that you can expect. So the goal here is the algorithm to actually grab those specific values. So then you can have a set of variables, some kind of a structured data format that you can then work with, right? Because exactly what you mentioned at the beginning, then you wouldn't need a human to be just retyping them manually, or even if the PDF is native, then still somebody would need to still copy paste, which is also kind of a mundane and tedious task, right? So yeah, not having to deal with scans is already an improvement, but still like manual copy pasting, not such a great thing to be doing, unless for some relaxation time, if you want to,
like an invoice spa, right?
Exactly.
That's the thing. So the tool understands what is the type of the document that I just got, and then it decides, yeah, this is this type of a document. So it knows that it needs to get this type of data from it, and then it gets it from the document. What happens then? How does this connect to our business processes?
Sure. So maybe one more thing about classifiers, because that brings one more benefit, which is once you know which document type it is, you could be feeding it to different models, right? So you would
Right.
have specialized model for just invoices or just orders, and then you would be routing this specifically to given models, right? So there's also benefit in that, in understanding first what type of document we were dealing with here. Okay, what happens next? So since you got structure, then basically you can do anything that is, programmatically or RPA-ish wise possible to be doing with this data. So how it connects, that depends on the vendor that is for your solution, for your IDP solution. So it can be anything from basic API. So right now you probably expect any software vendor, there is one. So when you do have the API, then again, any sort of coding language that of your choice is gonna do, right? With the more sophisticated platforms, then probably there will be some ready-made interfaces, some libraries, maybe with RPA, where we deal with low code. However, that's not often the case, but let's say we're dealing with low code, then you would have some ready-made activities where you just, there's a drop down and you just select them. Hey, this is my model, this is my, document path, and you click OK, and then it goes and flies. So it can be basically anything in between. If this is important, because we don't have some resources when it comes to like some hard coding, not RPI style, not low code, but like the classical kind of a programming, then I would do some research if that's like, because this can make the entry barrier a bit steep if there's a lot of code. But also there are solutions like the mentioned document understanding, which like offer everything out of the box, and the experience is really, really nice, even for the non-technical users. I often, we will get to the training probably later, but I often refer to training as coloring book, because you just, you got this pretty nice graphical user interface where business user just selects pieces of text and data, and there you go, and this is how it works.
Yeah, so maybe let's get to that, because what we used to do with those old school OCRs is that if the model couldn't handle a particular document, it was basically handing it over to manual handling for a human to book it, right?
Sure.
And this meant that, unfortunately, if you weren't putting enough effort into maintenance, then in time you would get more and more invoices into manual handling, because the model was able to understand less and less of your invoices, right? How does this work with intelligent document processing?
Yeah, so what you might want to look for is a solution that incorporates something called human in the loop. So exactly what the name suggests is that you don't interrupt the process, but you put man in the middle, which is a human in this particular case, not any robot or AI, but an actual human that is this part that validates if the data is okay. And the neat part is that you don't need to split the automation, you just incorporate the human. You can also run some items in parallel, which is also handy, that you don't stop everything just for this one document to be validated. And again, depending on the solution, it might be really nice user interface, or maybe you need to build this on your own. So that depends on what you're buying. But in our experience, that a station is validation station is a graphical user interface when you get the document displayed, and you also get those values both for classification, so that recognized document type, and you get all the values for the fields that you care about on that document. And then you get to actually check if the model did all right or not. And here comes the important aspect of confidence score or level or however you want to call it. So what you need to accept with these kind of solutions is that it's not your classical RPA, that once you build a as bulletproof algorithm that is as bulletproof as possible, then you just hope that it doesn't break and you hope those maintenance hours will be low. But here you need to accept that some stuff are not going to be 100% correct, right? So we already mentioned that OCR can make mistakes, but also AI might not be, 100% correct or confident. So the concept is that for each, not getting too technical, but that neural net will give you some values that are not strictly probabilities, but you can think of it as probabilities. So these numbers usually ranging from 0 to 100% because that's kind of natural for us to grasp the percentages of chance, going to represent how confident the model is that a given value is actually that value that you care for, right? So, okay, I think that this is, saying I'm a, I'm a model, and I think this is invoice number, and I'm like, 85% confident that this is the correct thing I got for you from that document. And then you get to decide if you're comfortable with that 85% to run some kind of next automation that comes after the IDP solution. Our usual approach would be to first, don't be scared of heuristics. So, okay, AI is great and does great stuff. Really, the technology is mature, but don't be afraid to be looking stuff up or building some mapping tables. If you can actually find that invoice number somewhere in the system first, and only then decide based on that you want to display this validation station to a human user, then do it. Why not? It's going to be quick and it's going to be more robust than just relying on some percentages of confidence. But this is important concept that you need to sleep on, especially from the business perspective. That, the tool probably gonna do like 80% of your work, but we're not there yet. Maybe for very simple cases, when the pass-through, like touchless pass-through without human would be 100%. I don't think that currently it's possible. Besides, oftentimes you will see some executives, managers, leaders, not very comfortable with leaving everything to AI, right? You're gonna have some maybe auditing processes and, still there's trust, but still probably hardly anybody for some important processes that are also external, maybe to your customer base, to be leaving everything to AI, no matter how robust it is. It's just, sometimes that little bit of human touch is still important.
Sure. But this is also something that people need to remember is that AI is not supposed to be perfect. It's going to take it some time, at least, for it to be perfect or to produce perfect results. But we also have to remember that humans are neither, right?
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, our correctness KPIs were usually like 96% for invoice booking, right? So this means that in 4% of the invoices, you would find something done wrong if done by humans, right? Not because it's so hard for people, it's the other way around. It's because it gets very easy, so you get distracted, you forget things, somebody talks to you, I don't know, maybe you didn't sleep that well. So I do understand why the businesses are hesitant to use those non-deterministic models where you only get a probability score, but it's not like humans are that much better at it, right?
Yeah. And one important factor is that usually people don't validate so thoroughly, right?
Yeah.
So after some time, you kind of fall into those, I'm used to that my vendor X and Y, okay, they never make mistakes in pricing. So I just skim through, okay, right?
Yeah.
Show me a person that is patient enough to be running a check against some ERP system of a 30 pages long PDF. Show me that person.
Yeah.
Really, come on, line by line. It's so actually there was a case with one of our customers that they did not, and it's oftentimes that there's no time, there's no people, there's no manpower to be doing certain process because you just cannot afford the volume. It's just inhuman to ask somebody, you got 10,000 pages and you need to compare them to some kind of a database. This is just, crazy. Okay, sometimes as said, there are portions where I also crave some manual work just to, but I treat it as a relaxation kind of a situation, not doing this daily. This just sounds insane.
Sure. I think we should also think from this perspective, like if you are a big company, you get thousands, tens of thousands of invoices every day, right? And then this just is too much, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand that sometimes whether humans or a machine will get things wrong, and you need your processes to be able to handle that.
Yeah.
And so we have a tool, we put invoices in, it does its magic, then we get structured data. Structured data is already easy for computers to work with. So then we have some sort of an interface into our systems that transfer this data. As you said, maybe it's like a low-level integration, or maybe it's just a robot putting things in, because robots don't get tired and they are way more efficient in data entry than humans are. So when we started with invoices, as this is something that most companies start with when it comes to intelligent document processing, because everybody gets invoices, and the bigger you are, the more invoices you get. But what are some other types of documents that you could be processing with IDP where it actually still makes sense to use the technology?
What I would suggest is to take those two basic functionalities of classification and extraction. So, understanding what document type it is, and then fetching that data, getting that data out of the document. And then I would, brainstorm stuff that I could be doing with these two functionalities for any processes. So I take my process X that involves documents, and then I know, okay, I could be doing classification and extraction with this, how this can help me. So other examples that we did and are more interesting, because, just classifying and extracting and typing into somewhere else is just the most common thing. We just, that's how reality is. But more interesting cases that I remember were to be recognizing whether signature is present on the document. So the customer did not care about any sort of text or data, but they wanted there were like 3 fields on some delivery documents of sorts. And all they cared is to tell us, okay, if there's like 3 yeses, like in the, you've got talent kind of a situation. And there were stamps and handwritten signatures. So then with such stuff, you probably might want to lean again towards more like image kind of recognition systems, because they're specialized. Because with signatures, handwriting, but especially signatures, you get more of these, strokes and curvatures and stuff. So, and OCRs are more focused on actually recognizing printed text. And especially with the stamps, like, gosh, somebody still does it, But yeah, that's still the reality for many companies. Actually, fortunately, it worked. The solution we use, so again, document understanding, fortunately, it supports like specific field for signatures. and they can be just booleans, so logical values of yes or no, and we use that, and it worked pretty much like 80-90% of the cases were read correctly, like 2 out of 3 yeses. So that's one example. Another was for a Lithuanian company where some authorities, like government authorities, they requested some documents from a company, and they were allowed to do so, being the government and stuff. But on the other hand, I think the GDPR needed to be, we need to be compliant with GDPR. So they couldn't just hand over those documents. They needed to obfuscate, so anonymize personal data of the employees, because these were probably some HR or some contracts. But generally, you needed to hand over the documents, but you need to have them anonymized. So the solution was to use that extraction, but not to extract, but to nail down where those values are. And then use some third-party libraries. I don't know, this can basically be anything. We used Python that would just draw like black rectangles on top of that, and then just flatten the whole thing into a file that you cannot, some reverse engineer it to uncover. But I doubt that anybody in that government would be trying to, read that personal data, doing so, going the extra mile for reverse engineering. So this is what we did. And one more interesting case, again, high volumes, problematic case, HR documents. So they had, still probably have, but fortunately fighting it, had a lot of HR-based documents. So you know how it is. You get contract, but then you also get like your gym membership card and healthcare, and all that requires you to sign some kind of agreement that it's deducted from your pay, etc. So there's a lot of HR paperwork going on. And they had it, and paper is whole another story, right? Keeping a lot of paper. So they wanted to digitize it. But back then, it seemed like a good idea just to put those piles of paper straight into some scanner and just go with it, and don't care that, for example, this scanner just outputs you like 100 or 150 pages long PDF that is merged. God forbid if those pages were mixed and not put into the order, that would be a nightmare. But still, if they are merged, then this is a challenge to understand that, okay, from page 1 to 5, this is document A or 1, and from page 6 till whatever, it's another document. So that's another challenge. So these tools can also help us with that. So they can try to understand that this document ranges from here to here and split it for us into chunks. So that's one thing we did. And second thing, the general goal here was later on that they realized that they want to move from paper documentation to some kind of HR, Workday, whatever kind of a system. So the task was to actually check if John Smith, if they have this kind of a document and this and this. So it was about going through this large pile of documents and scans, and first splitting and then understanding that, okay, John Smith has this document signed and this, but maybe they don't have, I don't know, like some doctor, like medical care yearly done. And that was the assignment. So again, I wouldn't, sky's the limit at first. This is what I would do. Brainstorm the idea, having that in mind that it can do these two things. And then, the technical people will help you to say that maybe this is not yet viable to do, or maybe we should wait, or it just won't pay off, right? Because the development effort will be too high, right?
Sure. I mean, in the end, you need to have enough volume for the project to make sense. But so I understand what you're saying is something we would start with simple documents, like more on the structured side, high volume, so invoices, purchase orders, kind of a lot of stuff in finance, account statements. So this is the kind of a thing that a lot of companies would start with. Then when it comes to HR administration, we do get a lot of paper, and especially that companies have to keep those documents for a very long time. And that also means that if the company has been on the market for a long time, it probably has a huge amount of boxes with a lot of paper.
Or
right?
fireproof cabinets.
Exactly. And a lot of the time, we don't really know what's in there. As you said, we may not always be aware of whether we have all of the documentation that we need. And a lot of companies are still in the process of digitizing all those archives, right? So this is for sure one of the things where it could help us. And then we have this box of more strange stuff. So like you said, finding signatures or obfuscating data. So this is a more kind of creative way of using the tool to handle whatever papers we may be having. And by papers, I mean it can be physical paper or it can be digitized paper. So, and this is one thing that amazes me is that we are using PDFs, right? But PDF isn't really a great format, right? For data processing, for digital processing, PDF is still unstructured data, right? Yeah. Unless you have some hidden layers with the structure. And this is one thing that when I think about start of my career and manual invoice processing, in those 20 years, we have moved from paper to basically what is a digital paper, but it's still a paper because this is not structured data. We didn't move to CSV files or SQL tables. We have just moved from one kind of paper to another kind of paper, right?
Idea is the same, just the medium changed.
Yeah.
And people oftentimes forget that PDF, I think the creator is gone right now. I mean, I think a couple of years ago. So there's no one to blame right now for the thing. But yeah, PDF is much more underneath than meets the eye, right? And people often forget that I think originally it was designed for print, for, marketing and copy and, some brochures and, like the digital kind of, leaflets kind of situation but it got quickly adapted to be most popular format for basically anything, right? So, it was a shot to the knee, as you said, that we did not go the extra mile to figure out, because right now, basically, these tools help us solve a mistake from the past, right? Yeah. If everything was running via API or, some EDI system, sorts, more three-letter acronyms right there. So you wouldn't need those, right? If somebody sent you that data already structured, then you wouldn't need machine learning or large language models or any sorts of AI to be recognized for you. So,
but that would be my next question, because there are already some countries in Europe that would have centralized e-invoicing. Yep. In Poland, we're still struggling with it. It has been postponed a few times, but maybe someday it will come. How do you think it will affect the need for using IDP technologies?
Yeah, so right now, with the base we've got, hard to say. With the invoices, most popular type, and as you said, countries, especially Europe, I don't know, the States probably less because of, this state does that and this, that. But in Europe, sometimes the union does like a good thing and can actually impose some general laws that everybody needs to abide. But okay, back from the politics, not about politics, but it's about that if you were to deal with invoices, then I would at least consider it and do some research on some either European Union, if your country is in European Union, or your local government initiatives, because I guess it also, and not guess, I see improvement of, like governments going digital, more stuff that you can do online, new passport, new ID, new driving license, etc. So I would at least do research so it doesn't turn out that, okay, you did a solution in half a year and another half year later, it turns out that everybody goes invoicing system, digital invoicing, and not only they are willing to, but they're like legally obliged to actually go this way. So there's no other way, and any reasonable or big software vendor will need to adapt and comply, and it's going to be expected. RPA is gonna probably, there's gonna be a burst of libraries and stuff that just do it for you, right? We also have one, even though our Polish invoicing system is,
we already have a library for XEF. We had it for like a year and a half, and XEF is still not there, so we're waiting.
And it's lying on a shelf, gathering dust. So that's the thing. So research, because in scale of the whole time length of a project, that research gonna take you one day, but at least you're not gonna end up doing something that when you cut that, that ribbon or break the champagne with a bottle of champagne on a ship, then it's going to be obsolete already, or soon to be obsolete.
But the research needs to be thorough, because from what I understand, a lot of those e-invoicing national systems, they only have the basic data from the invoice, right? And they do not have the tables with the details. And so you still need to find a way to read those, right? Plus, of course, then it's just invoices, and we still process a lot of other document types, and so probably this technology will stay with us for a little while longer. I would presume.
Yeah, so the pace of technology and the pace of adaptation are totally two different things, right? So we observe it with, for example, the IDP solutions, that it was new like 3-4 years ago, and people were trying to experiment. Technology-wise, in a technology scope of things, 4 years is a quite substantial time. But still, people are coming to us, customers, with the same old stuff, same problems, same PDFs. Everybody has PDFs. So show me a company that doesn't run PDFs. So I guess it's gonna here to stay, and I'm just maybe it's not afraid. It's as a consultant or any like tech expert. Sometimes you can find yourself in a situation where you want to give your best advice, but right around the corner, maybe even tomorrow, next best thing comes out, and you're unsure if, after a week's time, your advice that you gave with your most honest, having customers' interest, as a top priority, really, then if it was really the best advice to give at a given time. Staying aware of what's going on in the tech world is definitely something to remember about. But then something that already runs and already can give you some like profit, some benefit out of it, still gonna be better than chasing the dream over and over again and not getting anything done because you're too afraid that day after tomorrow, there's gonna be next great thing that replaces everything. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Of course, right now, the boom, the hype with the large language models, of course, something to consider because they can prove to be useful, but it doesn't mean that we need to just drop everything else, like lose interest, like a toy that we played around just 1 week time like a child, and then go and grab the next best thing because it's nice and shiny.
Sure. I completely agree. There's a risk to always chasing the newest kind of software because it's often not that mature yet and you don't know what things it's not very good at. But on the other hand, it's also a huge risk to not implement something you want to implement because you're waiting for that e-invoicing to start, and then it's being postponed forever, and then you don't really get things done. There's a few major players on the market, and in Office Samurai we are mostly using document understanding from UiPath. Can you tell me why we're doing that? Why we're not using majority of other vendors?
I guess our habits play a key role here,
Sure.
right? So we already know the technology. The vendor is known to be integrating stuff well with all the other portfolio of the products. So it's then, easy rather than staying like for 2 weeks deep in some API documentation. So there's that probably. So easy to use. Another advantage would be the ease of implementation for business users. So as I mentioned, the training is like a coloring book. You just place a subject matter expert from business side of things, and you just tell them, okay, here I give you 100 pages, please. On each page, mark me the invoice number, the date and stuff. And then they don't need to worry about any, training and actually running some training pipeline and stuff. And that is also, many parts of abstraction are taken away from the user. Sometimes oftentimes it's great. At times it's a bit, hand-tightening that we cannot, manipulate every single object or JSON, because sometimes we would like to, especially with some difficult cases. But where it pays off is those most popular cases where you don't want to scare the business off with code. You still want to remain in that low-code domain, and where you want to, have everything integrated and some functionality being out of the box, because they offer like pre-trained models that already come with some baseline efficiency. So just to give you an example, average of 60, 70, that confidence score that we're talking, probably for like most common pre-trained fields for the mentioned invoices or any popular document types. So there's that. So you don't start from completely blank page, but you already got something to start with. So that can also lower that entry barrier for the people and for the business to get interested.
Yeah,
That sums it up.
I think it's also about if you're already using the software for RPA, which is where it usually starts, then onboarding another tool within the same platform is very easy, both from the perspective of, you don't have to onboard a new vendor and new technology. It's within the same platform. And from the perspective of integration with what you already have.
I know what I wanted to say. So I don't follow any, those Gartner Magic Quadrants and stuff, but they seem to be like, top right corner mentioned as the leader for that technology. So I think this is also says something about them, that, some benchmarking, I don't know how to call them, bodies, that they consider them to be a leader in that technology. But again, I wouldn't totally lose focus on some other stuff out there. Because, as said, technology advances, but again, don't be chasing the next best thing all the time.
Yeah, and on that topic, because we do get questions about large language models. Large language models are very good at analyzing text, so kind of understanding things the way humans understand things. So there is a lot of companies get this idea about why instead of intelligent document processing, why can't we just put it in ChatGPT, right?
Sure.
This is how the question is usually phrased. What's your take on that? Is this, are we there yet? Is this a viable option or not yet? How does this look like?
So first thing I always mention, but is the repeatability. So one thing, but you can do it once via interface, but again, doing high volumes would probably involve you to do some kind of a interface or like a workflow, like in any environment of your choice, but you need to do it. Of course, there's API. Somebody can really quickly tell me, hey, I can be pushing it over API. Sure, but then you need to build it by yourself, or maybe probably there's stuff out there on the market that already does that, like some startup. Right now, there's a huge like explosion of new companies. So probably it's already being done by somebody out there. So that's one thing. Second thing, we need to remember that documents, especially, okay, let's stick to invoices, but generally these documents of these types, not mentioning contracts or, something with large portions of actual text, paragraphs, the words, the sentences that actually convey some meaning, right? Because on the contract, you'd have some, terms and conditions and all these stuff, and they're gonna be expressed in natural language. So maybe that's the way to go. But staying in the realm of like corporate documentation that is, transaction oriented, right? Like invoices and stuff, then we need to remember that they are not really that rich in text itself. I know there's a lot of letters, characters on them, right? But there's little meaning to a particular sentence, okay? Sometimes you get some notes and some terms and conditions of delivery and stuff, but usually it's just more about that key pieces of information, like these products in that table. And this is where still that dedicated IDP solutions kind of work better, I think. Of course, I encourage everybody to be doing their own experiments and comparing the results one to another. But still, the origin of the all large language models is about understanding language and not about understanding structures. But a very interesting area would be to building hybrids. So what large language model could do is, for example, first you take that output from the IDP solution, and then you ask large language model to maybe validate this, right? Because it can understand context very well. So maybe you could be building some context around it, maybe turning this, not using this only as a chatbot, but actually building an agent that would have a tool, and it can go and verify that data for you and do those validations, that you can give them access, that agent can have access to your ERP database, your ERP system, and it can look up stuff and tell you that this number is actually correct or not. Big area is some fuzzy matching, where we name our product this way and our customer or vendor, they name this product this way. And there's a mismatch. Sometimes you have both in your system, but oftentimes you don't. So then, I write plate of steel, something dimensions, and somebody scrambles the words and they're not written on the document the same way. So then you could ask the agent not to do like a strict matching, because of course that strict matching will oftentimes fail. But you can ask it to examine, hey, is it really the same thing, just expressed with different sort of wording or character symbols, right? So this can also, bump up that volume that you would normally need to push that validation station, because again, the match was not exact, but you want to do some fuzzy logic. Another area where you could be using large language models to support IDP is with handwriting. So we know that these models handle handwriting pretty nicely. So what we did once with the experiment, okay, maybe not we, but Konrad, again, not taking credit away from him. So he said, he normally went through the whole path with the document via IDP. So normally, digitalization and classification extraction. But then he used that OCR text and that document object model, and he fed it back to large language model so it can, along with the image, which had a lot of handwriting, and it asked it to correct some mistakes in the handwriting that OCR failed to recognize. So then we got the best of both worlds because, the OCR did, and the whole framework did the part that it's good at. So recognizing, hey, this is the header and not something gibberish. And LLM did really nicely on improving the legibility of understanding actually reading the handwriting, where OCR failed a little bit. And the third factor is that mentioned confidence level. So you need to remember that large language models will not give you any sort of probability. You can ask it to, but then again, it's probably going to be taken out of the blue, right? So there's going to be no thresholding kind of a situation when you want to, feel at least a bit confident. Everybody that deals with large language models heard of hallucinations. So yeah, if you use the LLMs, you need to bear in mind that, it can be just, the validation part is important.
When it's wrong, it's gonna tell you it's hallucination with 100% certainty, right? And it's not gonna tell you it's not sure. It's just gonna tell you, yes, this is the answer.
But it's gonna apologize to you for doing the wrong thing, and then you need to apologize to your customers or business partners or whatever, right? So yeah, again, going back to that thing I said before, hardly any executive will right now, leave everything to AI without any human supervision. We're not there yet.
Sure. So for now, we're doing hybrid. We're joining those technologies for each of them to do the things that it's best at, and what the future holds, we'll just have to wait and see. Did you encounter any projects or types of documents this technology failed, where somehow it was not enough or it didn't work like we wanted it to?
Yeah, so mentioned handwriting, this is still a thing, right? So don't do handwriting. Hopefully, maybe we're not there yet, but as I told you, I went to doctor's appointment I had, and I was very happy that they're no longer writing on pieces of paper of your patient record, but they use computer for that. So at least there is that. So yeah, definitely handwriting. I would still try to avoid it if possible.
I mean, it would have to be really maybe capital letters in those little boxes.
Right.
Fine,
it's no longer the case from the past that handwriting was a showstopper, right? We're not doing that. No pieces of handwriting allowed. So you could try, but again, as you said, expect it to work well when the handwriting needs to be legible, right? Even for us humans, when somebody writes badly, then you cannot read it, right?
That's what I do.
Yeah. So there's the thing with handwriting, definitely. Maybe, low quality scans, but this happens rarely right now. So yeah, we're going into the right direction. And again, if we really deal with low quality scans, then I would ask myself questions if it wouldn't be cheaper just to replace the equipment, right? Because it's not like these copiers from 30 years ago where everything is with this black inkish, covered with this black inkish stuff, right? With this powder of sorts. So it's not that era anymore. So I would consider replacing equipment. With the signatures, I would say also problematic, especially with illegible signatures. Hopefully we didn't have to decipher what the signature is. We just needed to check whether it's there or not. So that was a good thing. So then again, I would go for something, those touchpads where you can actually even sign with your finger. So and we're going towards DocuSign and Authentic, right? So explore that definitely. But the thing that was actually the most problematic and not originating from handwriting, all these obstacles that are sometimes difficult to eradicate, was nested tables. Like really beware of nested tables. These are difficult because the tool we use, you can define like 2D-dimensional X and Y columns, rows, structures, but oftentimes in documents you have these tendencies to be building one big table that, for example, mentions all your, patients from this given company, like with medical, for example, records. So you would have one big table that has positions 1, 2, 3, etc. And then inside the one column and for each row on that position, you would have the next table that mentions, for example, examinations that or some lab tests that a given person has had in that doctor's or laboratory or whatever, right? So you would have nested tables, and then it gets problematic to teach the model that, you know what, here's the big table. You don't even, there's a new thing that came out recently for nested tables, and we're about to test that, but going back like 2-3 years ago when we're recording, then there was no such thing. So you had needed to do some work around and try to, tell the model, hey, I'm going to show you that this is column 1 and row 1 from this big table, but you're not getting those nested values just yet. Just wait until we get there. Then you mark these 3 or 4 from the nested, then you move to, and then you need to post-process the data to compensate for those missing values in that, outer table of sorts. So yeah, definitely. And I don't know, again, this is us hurting ourselves with those layouts. And I don't know, maybe it looks good. It looks good for human eye, but if we want to replace people just retyping, copy pasting from these documents, then let us stop doing those fancy layouts.
This is our announcement.
Yes, please,
to all the people who are designing invoices and other types of
really
documents.
For automation, a text file is going to be better. Listing everything out. We can deal with that, but no fancy layout.
Yeah, no nested tables,
please. No.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see if this works. Maybe it will solve the problem. Maybe someday we will get to intelligent document processing isn't needed anymore because we exchange data with each other in a way that makes sense in the 21st century, not in the 20th century. But it's going to be a long time, so I wouldn't...
It's easy to complain, right? And it takes a huge... operational, like change management kind of a situation to change the tide. Come on, everybody uses Excel, everybody uses PDFs. The documents are flying around in tens of thousands, right? For even single company, single customer. So it's very difficult to be fighting this because it feels like Sisyphus work, right? To be doing this. But I wouldn't completely take this out of the picture, right? So for example, if you're starting fresh as a new company, as a startup, already think about how will you handle this, because after 5-10 years, it's gonna catch up on you, right? It's gonna backfire. Like those guys that did those scans. So if back then, if they went an extra mile and already did it in a more, go that extra mile and do something else rather than just put all those pieces of paper into that scanner, then maybe they wouldn't wake up with a problem like 5 or 10 years later. So it's not singular problem. It's what everybody does nowadays. But if you could incorporate some kind of already digitized process, but again, in a sense, how computers talk to each other, right? So via API or standardized formats like XMLs, JSON and stuff, it's still going to be better than just doing what you said. So replacing paper as a structured physical piece of wood, preprocessed piece of wood, right? And turning it into its digital version as a PDF.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, someday maybe we will get to that. For now, for sure, we're going to need the tools for the next decade or 2 or 5. We'll see. how long it takes. Yeah, I think we can clearly see that there is loads of options on how to use intelligent document processing in our companies. The bigger the company, the more paper, be it physical or digital kind of paper we get, and we have to process it somehow. And it's not just about the savings, it's also about it being harder and harder to find people who will actually want to do this kind of a job.
True.
When I was starting 20 years ago, I didn't really have much choice. The labor market in Poland was not what it is today. But today, to find people who will be doing it and will be doing it long enough for it to make sense for you to teach them, it's getting really, really hard. So this is another reason to start doing it as automatic as we possibly can.
Sure. And those volumes, they're not going to get lower, right? Every business needs to grow, so we can only expect them to rise. So yeah, it's time to deal with it. So we cannot expect the world to change. Although sometimes I have like dealing with particularly difficult problem, I'm like, wow, apocalypse would help. So, we could start over again with everything, building the world a better place. But then I'm like, no, we would probably do something the same. Maybe slightly better, but not that much better.
Yeah, okay. So we see we have two options. We either implement intelligent document processing or we just wait for the apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. Drop the bomb on it.
Yes. So, on that optimistic note, Tomasz, thank you so much for sharing your experience about intelligent document processing. Maybe we can have another episode in 5 years, and then we'll see how many things have changed.
A bet like you have with Dominic about the guaranteed.
We could take a bet to see whether XEV will be implemented.
XEV, and first let's check what that message about not doing fancy PDFs gets us to. So maybe we'll see if it improves.
So again, to the people who are designing
no fancy
templates, remember, in 5 years we're gonna check up on you.
Simplicity is beautiful.
Yes, let's go for that. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
All right, folks, that's it. Another Office Samurai podcast, sliced, diced, and served like your favorite sashimi platter. We did this episode in cooperation with UiPath, our first choice in process automation platforms. Huge thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Whether you're on your commute, stuck in a meeting pretending to take notes, or just hiding from your inbox, we see you, we appreciate you, and we promise not to automate you. Yet. A huge thank you to our guest, Tomasz Wierzbicki, for showing us the path to victory over paperwork. And as always, a round of applause for Anna Cubal, our producer, who wrangles these episodes with more precision than an IDP model reading a perfectly formatted invoice. This was all recorded at the legendary Wodzu studio, where the coffee is strong, but our hatred for manual data entry is stronger. If you liked what you heard, tell your friends. And if you hated it, definitely tell your enemies. Remember to subscribe wherever you're currently procrastinating, Spotify, Apple, or that weird podcast app your cousin recommended. And hey, if you loved it, hated it, or have suggestions for future episodes, or just want to argue about acronyms, don't hesitate to reach out. Send us your feedback, your questions, or even your haikus about automation. We're open-minded here at Office Samurai. Until next time, keep your blades sharp and your processes sharper. Matane.